Today's lesson is called Feathertop. Hello, everyone. My name is Jeff.
My name is Roger, and today we're summarizing the 1852 story by Nathaniel Hawthorne called Feathertop. And this is all about Mother Rigby and her scarecrow. She built a scarecrow using quality garments to scare those nasty crows away, but the scarecrow was just done so well that she didn't have the heart to use it as a scarecrow, and then that scarecrow came to life, I guess because she had some special powers, the powers of a witch, and then she told the scarecrow named Feathertop to go into town and introduce himself to the judge's beautiful daughter. And, of course, he was very charming, but he needed to keep his pipe lit, and he needed to keep smoking it, otherwise he would die.
And this is kind of ironic and interesting because usually smoking leads to death. For Feathertop here, if he doesn't smoke, he will die. How interesting. All right, folks, with that, it's time for us to take a short break, but don't go away. When we come back, we'll read some more from Feathertop.
Feathertop was as graceful and charming as a prince. Strolling into town, he drew the admiration of every pair of eyes on the street. When he reached the house of Judge Gookin, Feathertop was led inside and introduced to Polly. The two began to chat, and the more Feathertop talked, the more Polly fell in love with him.
各位好，第一部分我们看到动词 stroll 指闲逛、散步。例如 Gordon always strolls around the park in the morning. Gordon 早上总是会绕着公园散步。另外，除了上面的意思，这个字还有以下两种用法。第一，指缓步走。举例来说 Linda strolled into the party several hours late.Linda 迟到好几个小时才慢慢走进派对。第二，这个字也可以当名词，指散步、漫步，像是 I took my dog on a stroll through the park on Sunday afternoon. 星期天下午，我带着我的狗在公园里漫步。
Okay, now remember, Mother Rigby sent the scarecrow Feathertop into town to introduce himself to the judge's daughter, Polly. And he was smoking his pipe, and he cannot let his pipe go out or else he's going to die. But Feathertop was as graceful and charming as a prince. So yeah, just like a prince, he was graceful and he was charming. So here we've got the word graceful, which means you have grace, you are elegant, and this is oftentimes used to describe a girl who has good manners and has a good family background and stuff like that, and knows how to talk to people and make them feel happy and stuff like that. But you could also use this word to describe a gentleman.
Yeah, someone who's graceful, they do stuff, but they make it look good. Sometimes people are gawky or uncoordinated. They walk across a room and they almost fall down 3 or 4 times. They trip on their feet and stuff like that. Graceful people, on the other hand, with grace, they might walk across a room and they might make it look good, as though they're dancing across the room ever so subtly. So here we've got Feathertop. Boy, was he graceful. How graceful was he? He was as graceful and charming as a prince. So he strode about town and people were thinking, who's that guy? How graceful, how charming. Everyone is taking a liking to this guy. Now, strolling into town, he drew the admiration of every pair of eyes on the street. So remember, he's in those quality garments, so his clothes look good, and perhaps the pumpkin thing, people aren't too distracted by the fact that his head is actually a pumpkin, but he's strolling into town, walking around leisurely as if he has no other place to go. He's strolling around there, and he is drawing the admiration of everyone. Everyone looks upon Feathertop and goes, Wow, what a guy. Every pair of eyes on the street were on Feathertop.
Yep, he drew their attention. He attracted their admiration. But when he reached the house of Judge Gookin, Feathertop was led inside and introduced to Polly. Okay, so he's charming and he's graceful. So Judge invites him inside the house and says, "Here, I'd like to introduce you to my daughter, Polly."
There you go. And the two began to chat, and the more Feathertop talked, the more Polly fell in love with him. Remember, this guy is graceful and dashing and charming and debonair. He's pretty much the coolest scarecrow ever, and Polly is just falling in love with him. All right, folks, with that, it's time for us to take a short break, but don't go away. We have more of this story right after this.
As the two of them happened to be standing close to a full-length mirror, Polly cast a casual glance at their reflection. To her shock, however, rather than seeing a gorgeous gentleman by her side, Polly saw a scraggly scarecrow. She fell in a heap, and Feathertop, horrified, ran back to Mother Rigby.
第二部分我们看到单字 full length 这个字是形容词，指镜子全身的或是窗帘落地的。例如Jessie stands in front of a full-length mirror, appreciating her new dress. Jessie 站在一面全身镜前，欣赏她的新裙子。另外，除了上面的意思，这个字还可以指完整版的、未删减的。我们可以说 This full-length novel is up to 538 pages. 这部完整版的小说长达538页。再补充几个以 full 开头的相关片语。第一 ，full steam ahead 表示全力以赴。举例来说 Jeffrey's new business idea is moving full steam ahead. Jeffrey 的生意新点子正在全速发展。第二 full court press 表示全面进攻、戒备。像是 Lucy prepared to unleash a full court press against her debate opponent. Lucy 准备对辩论对手展开全面进攻。第三 full blown 表示成熟的、充分发展的。例如The gathering soon turned into a full-blown party. 这场聚会不久就变成了彻头彻尾的派对。再来，我们看到形容词 scraggly 指蓬乱的、参差不齐的。举例来说 Gloria saw a homeless man with long scraggly hair sitting on the ground. Gloria 看到一名留着蓬乱长发的街友坐在地上。
Okay, so where we left off, the pumpkin man, Feathertop, was just introduced to Polly, the beautiful daughter of the judge, and they started to chat, and they were falling in love with each other. And as the two of them happened to be standing close to a full-length mirror, Polly cast a casual glance at their reflection. Okay, so they just happened to be standing close to a full-length mirror. Okay, they did not plan on this to happen. It was just a coincidence. They just happened to be standing close to a mirror. And it wasn't just a mirror above the sink in the bathroom. It was a mirror that extended from head level to foot level. It was full length. If you look in the mirror, you can see your whole body. They have mirrors like that in clothing stores, so you can see what you look like when you try on a new outfit.
Yeah, you can check your entire figure out in a full-length mirror, from your shoes to your hat. And Polly, she cast a casual glance at their reflection. So the mirror was there. She couldn't help herself. She looked over into the mirror, and she didn't like what she saw. Anyways, what do you see in a mirror? You see a reflection. If you're standing in front of a mirror, you see an image of yourself. That's not you, but that image you see of yourself in the mirror, you can call that a reflection. Okay, reflection is the noun. It comes from the verb reflect.
Yep, it's the image that's coming back to you from that mirror. It could come back to you from the surface of a lake or from a window or something like that. So yes, she cast a casual glance at their reflection, but to her shock, she was shocked to see, however, Rather than seeing a gorgeous gentleman by her side with charm and grace, Polly saw a scraggly scarecrow. So rather than here just means instead of. She was expecting to see a gorgeous, handsome man there right next to her by her side. But what she actually saw was a scraggly scarecrow. I think scraggly here just means kind of skinny and you don't really look very healthy.
Yeah, scraggly person. You're thin and you're bony and you're unattractive. You might be untidy and a little bit gross. And Polly saw this, a scraggly scarecrow, and she did not like what she was seeing. Remember, just before, she was falling in love with this guy. How graceful he was, how charming, how handsome. She was falling head over heels in love with him. But then she realized, hey, this guy's just a scraggly scarecrow. Oh my goodness. So she fell in a heap. And Feathertop, horrified, ran back to Mother Rigby. What am I, Mother Rigby, and what have I done to poor Polly Gookin?
Indeed. So, yeah, she was so shocked there. I guess she fainted. She fell in a heap. Here, a heap is just a pile of something. Like if you haven't done your laundry in a long time, you might have a heap of dirty clothes in your bedroom there. So, yeah, get to it, do some laundry there. And she fell in a heap on the floor. And Feathertop, of course, was horrified because I guess he just happened to see his reflection in the mirror. And he ran back to Mother Rigby, as you said, Mother Rigby, what am I? What have I become? Well, let's find out what happens next in the final portion of our lesson for today. Let's listen first.
At the house, Feathertop exclaimed, I've seen myself for the wretched, ragged, empty thing I am. I'll exist no longer. He threw his pipe onto the floor and slowly collapsed into a lifeless pile of cloth and straw. Poor fellow, Mother Rigby sighed, thinking about all the men in this world who go through life without ever truly knowing themselves. Feathertop, on the other hand, knew who he was. Mother Rigby wanted to revive Feathertop, but then she decided he would be better off as a scarecrow.
"第三部分我们看到单字 exclaim， 这个字是动词，指突然大声呼喊、惊叫。例如 Lily exclaimed she had lost her wallet. Lily 大叫说她钱包掉了。或是 Tina exclaimed that she got a perfect score on her math test. Tina 惊呼说她的数学考试考了高分。最后我们看到形容词 wretched， 指可悲的、不幸的、哀伤难过的，像是Jeff had a wretched childhood living in poverty. Jeff 有一个穷困的悲惨童年。
So, Feathertop, he's just learned something about himself, okay? He's not a debonair gentleman. He's not graceful. He's not charming. He's nowhere close to being a prince. He's just a scarecrow, and now he knows it, and Polly Gookin knows it as well. Yeah, she fainted when she learned that this guy that she was falling in love with was actually a scraggly scarecrow. Anyways, Feathertop ran back to Mother Rigby. I imagine he's filled with questions or maybe some answers. Anyways, at the house, Feathertop exclaimed, I've seen myself for the wretched, ragged, empty thing I am. I'll exist no longer, so I don't want to be anything but an actual scarecrow anymore, okay? I'll be a scarecrow, but get this pipe away from me. I no longer want to exist anymore.
Yep, I've seen myself for the thing that I am. That just means that you realize what you are and you didn't know it before. So now he knows, now he realizes that he is a scraggly, ragged scarecrow. He knows that now. I've seen myself for what I am, a He threw his pipe onto the floor and slowly collapsed into a lifeless pile of cloth and straw. Remember, he needs to keep smoking his pipe in order to stay alive, but he quit smoking right then and there. He threw his pipe onto the floor and then he collapsed into this pile of cloth and straw. So to collapse just means to fall down, like buildings collapse during earthquakes.
Yeah, you could have said before that Polly Gookin collapsed. And you know what? I'm kind of sad right now because Feathertop, sure, he's a scarecrow, but he was probably the greatest scarecrow ever to exist, okay?
Yeah.
It's very rare that people are actually confused scarecrows with princes or debonair gentlemen and stuff like that, so this is kind of sad. But Feathertop, he knew the truth. He exclaimed the truth. He said it at the top of his lungs. He declared it so that all could hear it dramatically. I've seen myself for what I am. It's killing me. I'm filled with pain. I'm just a wretched, ragged, empty thing. I'm not a man. I'm a scarecrow pumpkin thing man that's empty and also wretched and ragged. Anyways, when you use the word ragged and you're talking about clothes, usually you're talking about clothes that are a little bit torn and worn out. Didn't Mother Rigby actually put Feathertop here into nice garments? How does clothes all of a sudden become ragged?
Well, you know, it's all psychological, I think. A lot of people see people wearing nice clothes, but other people see them wearing ragged clothes. So I guess it's all in the eye of the beholder. And it could be psychological here because he saw himself in the mirror as a scarecrow. Then his clothes became ragged. And remember, Mother Rigby had witch powers.
Poor fellow, Mother Rigby sighed, thinking about all the men in this world who go through life without ever truly knowing themselves, knowing who they were at the deepest level. Feathertop, on the other hand, knew who he was. And again, this is kind of sad. One, he did have self-knowledge and self-awareness, which is rare. And he also is probably the best scarecrow to ever exist. Now, I don't know if he was good at scaring crows because he was never tested in that way. I don't know what happened to Mother Rigby's crows, actually. But as a scarecrow, he came pretty close to duping Polly Gookin.
Yeah, she almost fell for it. And of course, there's a lesson here. Maybe all men in the world think they're something great, but if they get the chance to know who they really are, they'll get really, really depressed and they will collapse into a pile on the floor as well. Here we've got the phrase to go through with something. In this particular case, it means to just live your entire life, but it could also mean to experience some difficulty. It might be difficult to go through a divorce, for example. It could be quite difficult if you and your partner decide to split up and not be married anymore. That would be difficult to go through. And, of course, the good thing here is that Feathertop knew who he was, and Mother Rigby wanted to revive Feathertop to bring him back to life. But then she decided he would be better off as a scarecrow. So, yeah, if you're better off, that just means you're doing better in a certain situation than you are in another situation. So, yeah, when I lived in America, I was poor, I was in debt, and after I moved to Taiwan, I was better off. I was making more money, had more friends, and I wasn't so depressed.
That particular state of affairs made more sense. There you go. All right, folks, with that, our story is now in the books, and it's time for you guys to hear from the Chinese teacher.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文第二部分有一个句子写到 To her shock, however, rather than seeing a gorgeous gentleman by her side, Polly saw a scraggly scarecrow. 好，句子里面用到 to her shock， 意思是令她震惊的事。好，当我们用 to 加上 once 再加情绪名词，是在表达说让某人感到怎么样的事，令某人怎么样怎么样的事。那这个用法可以用来修饰整个句子或是修饰主词，而其中的情绪名词我们要用单数。好，那常见的情绪名词有像是 disappointment 失望， joy 快乐， shock 震惊， surprise 惊讶， regret 遗憾等等。好，我们可以在 to 的前面加上副词 much 去强调它的程度，像我们可以说 much to her disappointment, she didn't get her dream job. 令她相当失望的是，她没有得到她的梦想工作。好，那我们再看到句子里面用到 rather than， 它后面接的是动名词 seeing。好，这是因为 rather than 在这边是当介系词片语，意思就跟 instead of 一样，用来表达说而非什么，而不是什么。所以特别注意 rather than 后面在这边是要接名词或动名词哦。好，再来故事最后写到说 Mother Rigby 想让 Feathertop 苏醒过来，但他后来决定还是让 Feathertop 当稻草人比较好。好，这边他用到 revive 这个动词来表达苏醒、恢复，使什么苏醒、恢复。好，那我们来学它的字首字根哦。我们看到 viv 或是 vit 或是 ving 这几个字根，它们就有生命、活力的意思。那么在 revive 这个字当中，它的 re 表示再度、再次， vive 表示生命，那么合在一起就可以用来表达苏醒、复苏了。好，我们顺便补充几个有相关字根的单字。第一个是 vital, vital 它的字根 vit 有生命的意思，那么 al 是形容词字尾，所以 vital 就可以用来表达生命的或是充满活力的，像我们可以说 vital sign 就是生命迹象。那同学们可以试着去联想，跟生命有关，那它就是不可或缺、非常重要的，所以 vital 也可以用来形容是极其重要、必不可缺的。好，第二个补充的单字就是 revitalize， 也就是在 vital 前面加上字首 re 表示再度、再次，然后我们接着在 vital 的后面加上动词字尾 ize， 就会得到这个 revitalize。 这个动词就表示使什么恢复生气、恢复精神，或是使什么复兴、振兴的意思。好，第三个补充的是 vigor, vigor 它的字根 vig 表示活力，然后 or 是名词字尾，那么 vigor 这个名词就是用来表达活力、体力、精力。好，第四个补充的是 survive， 同学们应该都知道它有这种生存、幸存、活下来的意思嘛。那么 survive 的字首 sur 它表示超越，然后 vive 的部分表示活、生活。那它原本呢是照字面意思用来表达说超越什么生活，就是说活得比什么什么久的意思。那么 A survive B 就是表达 A 活得比 B 久，在 B 过世之后 A 都还活着。那么后来呢 survive 它又衍生出这种超越险境而活下来的语义。好，那么以上是今天重点整理，我们回顾今天的单字吧。
Graceful. She stood in a graceful, relaxed pose as the artist painted her portrait. Stroll. David loves strolling along the beach with his wife at dusk. Reflection. Before his date, Jake spent ages looking at his reflection in the mirror. Exclaim. You've grown so much, the old lady exclaimed when she saw her grandson. Ragged. There is a thin, ragged man on the street begging for food. Revive. The doctors tried to revive the patient who had been brought to the hospital.
Discussion Starter starts now!
And now it's time for our discussion starter. Let's start a conversation. Hey, Roger, what do you think the moral of this story is?
I think the moral of the story is that you need to know who you really are deep down, but you don't necessarily have to hate yourself because of that. You might actually find out that you are better than you thought you were. How about you?
I believe the moral of this story is that you shouldn't trust witches. Sure, they're powerful, but sometimes they can use their powers in such a way that can lead to emotional collapse, like that found with Polygookin and Feathertop. Well, everyone, today's article has come to an end, and I sure hope you guys enjoyed reading and learning along with us. I am Jeff.
I am Roger.
See you next time.